Public.
No,
Yes, thank you.
employees.
Now's the time set for the adjourned budget committee hearing. Mr. Hanson, I believe we left off with public health fund. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'll give you a little synopsis of yesterday. All budgets that were presented were tentatively approved. If they were individual funds outside the general fund, both resources and appropriations were tentatively approved, and programs within the general fund on appropriations were tentatively approved. There are very few items left for the general fund. Most of these are going to be individual funds outside the general fund. We didn't have any wish list items that were added to the list for our operating procedures. So we can move forward with public health unless there are any comments you want me to talk about before we start.
Gentlemen, any further discussion? Mr. Hanson, let's proceed.
In your tab, we have public health. It's the right tab. I had Public Works open. This is its own operating fund. You're gonna have to tentatively approve both resources and appropriations. There are three program budgets within the public health fund. You have family planning, you have general health, and then you have the WIC program. Those are the three individual budgets. I don't believe we've had any other program budgets within public health in the last 25 years. So these are the constants. Family planning has fluctuated up and down. General health is where a bulk of the duties of the public health department lie. And then WIC is its own unique program. And it's been that way for 50 years plus probably. So we can go through family planning. This budget is a little reduced on FTE from what it was the previous year. Overall budget is down from the previous year as this program becomes smaller and smaller for the county. There's nothing special in that. It's more of a status quo budget with the exception of the ramping down and reduction of the FTE. General health, like I said, is where most of the bulk of the work and the duties of the public health department is. You can see that we have a reduction in FTE. We have a somewhat increase in costs associated in materials and services. Overall, it's pretty much a status quo budget with a moving to more contract services and less FTE. This budget has gotten smaller and smaller over time since COVID. It's bigger than it was pre-COVID, but post-COVID, it continues to decline as all the COVID revenues and additional funding that we got for that event is used up and eliminated. The third one is the WIC program, Woman, Infant, Child. This program continues at its same pace as it has in the past with FTE. Costs are up a little. Never have enough federal funding. Historically, it's always been underfunded, probably by 15 to 25%. They always talk about its importance, but they never fund it at the level it needs to be funded. As a result, it requires a general fund transfer. And in this case, the general fund transfers $200,000, or at least that's what it's being proposed at for this fiscal year. During the COVID times, we got down to basically zero because there was so much money flowing in, and keeping track of it was a nightmare for those that had to do that. So overall, I would propose that you tentatively approve the 3 program budgets along with the resources to cover those costs.
Further discussion?
Noel's here if you want to ask any questions. Amy's here. Everybody's here.
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Hartman and Mr. Wasson. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? The resources and appropriations for family planning, general health, and WIC tentatively approved.
All right. Next budget in your books and tab is behavioral health. The baby budget of the county. It's in this program, we made a modification this year. From the past, we combined the addictions program with the outpatient program budget. So there's one less program that you will have to TA for appropriations. This is the county's biggest budget. It is also the county's largest departmental employer too. So I can go through the individual budgets. As I said, there are no addictions program budgets for this upcoming year. You will have that show up in your books though for the next 2 or 3 years for history purposes. We have the support services program. That's where a lot of the support staff for behavioral health reside, along with a capital outlay of $6 million for the building of a new building on site adjacent to the existing academy building. It is also where the contingency resides for this department. So it's a $15 million type program budget, but over 12 million of that consists of contingency in the building. Well, that's not a $15 million support services grouping. It has 2 of the large ticket items included in that program budget. The next program is addictions, and that's going to be for history purposes. So the next budget that you will have to TA and look at is the outpatient mental health program. Obviously that program budget grew as you combine addictions with that. So even though it looks like it increased a lot of FTE and a lot of materials and services, that's the combination of 2 programs. It'll look closer to normal the following year after you have some history with this program with addictions added to it. You can see that we have a lot of FTE that are within the behavioral health program in this budget. You also have a lot of contract services. We try to contract out a lot of work that we're unable to hire for. You also have a special projects line item, which is kind of a catch-all of things that may or may not happen. If we don't expend that, that'll just add to the beginning fund balance like it has in the past. The last program is developmental disabilities. It has its own unique set of funding. It will probably never be combined with outpatient. It is somewhat of its own silo of money, and the FTE in there is increasing slightly over what we had last year. Funding is also increased. This budget almost pays for itself. So those are the program elements of behavioral health. If you really want in-depth analysis of it, Noel will need to step in and talk about the things that are going on and where we are with the state in certain aspects of workload and how we're dealing with staffing issues and all those kind of things. I could talk on it, but she's the real expert in this area, so. That's my presentation. I would tentatively approve the 3 program budgets that have appropriations and the revenues. It is 42 million, up 6 million almost from last year. Like I mentioned yesterday, that number will shrink because we have the large capital outlay for the building. And so you won't see that type of growth again. Or at least I don't anticipate seeing that type of growth again. If it is, I don't know how we'll be able to do the work anyway, staffing issues and all that. It has to somewhat stop somewhere. So if you would like anything from Noel, don't hesitate to ask.
Gentlemen, any further discussion or questions?
I've got a question of, I've noticed that the FTE has increased significantly in both of those, and yet you were saying contract services. Is it because you can't hire the people? There aren't people available in the state to do that at a contract level versus hiring as permanent employees?
There is so much demand on these services, both at the county level and in the private sector and in the school systems and everything else, that in my opinion, there isn't enough available workforce to do all the work that is being expected us to do. And I don't think there's going to be over the next 2-3 years. And it may get worse depending on what gets pushed out the door from the state to us. As I said, we've had to be creative. Government especially are doing things that they have never done before, with signing bonuses, retention bonuses, those kind of things, just to keep employees in this field here. And it's a competition, and everyone ramps up, and our ability to ramp up, it makes it difficult, because when you're treating one sector of employees at such a higher rate than the others, it's divisive and those kind of things. So, but you got to do what you got to do, and you know, we struggle trying to get employees here, but we're trying to do our best to retain those employees if we can.
Thank you.
What accounts for that lack of personnel? Is it lack of training early on, or is it increased need, or?
Part of it is demand. So as the state has pushed out more money to expand the programming, there's been a recognition that we need more people doing more behavioral health services. They've wanted to expand programs. So where you might have had 10 counselors in a shop, 15 years ago, now they want 30 or 40 counselors in a shop. So the demand on a workforce has tripled, quadrupled. And so the funnel to create that workforce has not been able to respond to meet that need in a timely fashion. So that's one of the issues. At the same time, you've had, because of that money influx, you've had some of the larger systems, the insurance companies, the hospitals, even the school systems. And then you've got private insurance coming in saying, hey, let's take advantage of this money grab. To some extent, they've been able to privatize how this work is happening and incentivize people to move away from community-based services into doing private practice, into moving into the hospital systems. So we've lost the people that have the expertise to those systems because they're able to pay more in today's market. So we've lost the expertise, and you don't have a workforce coming up to backfill the demand.
Is demand that, I'm going to ask you to speculate a little bit, and I apologize for that in advance. Is demand higher due to children being out of school from COVID, in front of screens, isolated? Is that causing a big increase in demand? And is that going to be temporary? Or are we seeing a new normal here?
You are asking me to speculate. I don't think there's any one single factor that anybody's gonna be able to. I think it's multifaceted. I think we have systemic societal issues that are happening at almost every level that we're not going to see as short term at this point, unfortunately. I think it's going to be, I think we're in a new normal, but everything is a pendulum. So how long that lasts, I think depends on how quickly our system can respond to what it's seeing and provide a good solution to that response.
That leads me to another question. You had said that we have some systemic problems at many levels. Would you enumerate those systemic problems?
I don't think that they're surprises. I think you hit on a couple. I mean, we've got everything from the state of your typical family. So you've got kids not being supported the way we would want them to be. The families are, you've got parents who are spending a lot of time out of homes, working too many jobs or not working at all, and the stress that causes on the family, regardless of which way that goes. And that stress funnels down to the kids, and they're showing us the effects of that. You've got adults who have grown up in different experiences over the last decade or more that are acting out the effect of that. So you've got a lot of people running around with different kinds of trauma that are now impacting our communities in various ways. So we're seeing that in homelessness, we're seeing that in the spikes of the severe types of mental illness that are in our communities. Part of what we're seeing there is the transition that happened about 20 years ago with deinstitutionalization. So when we did that, that was a good thing. But in order to do that well, you had to put the money into the community in a way that allowed that to work well in the community. We didn't get there. So you released a bunch of people that had really extreme needs to move to the community without putting the money into the community to provide the support that was necessary to make that successful and healthy and safe. So now as a system, as a community, we're dealing with that. And we can't respond quickly enough to prevent that from having an impact on the rest of us that are also here. So you're having all these ripple effects simultaneously coming together. I mean, those are just a couple of those things. So it's so systemic and multifaceted. You have to get hospitals, jails, schools, families, workplaces, governments to all work together with all those competing needs and demands and sit down at a table and put some of them aside for the betterment of the whole. And it's a huge, huge lift.
Thank you, Ms. Carroll. Other questions or discussions?
A motion to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Morthurst. Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. Hartman. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? Both resources and appropriations for behavioral health support services,
Outpatient.
outpatient and developmental disabilities are tentatively approved as proposed.
Thank you. The next tab in your book is Health Services. Health Services has two programs within it. May think next year of splitting out Health Services from FCO and creating FCO as its own fund, but aren't there yet. So you have two programs. You have the Health Services Admin, and then you have the FCO program. And we have Brent DeMoe here also if there are questions about the FCO and their operations and that. Health Services Administration is essentially a status quo budget. They charge out their services to behavioral health and a little to public health. Nothing really different than, like I said, in the past. So that's a fairly easy one to tentatively approve, in my opinion. And then you have FCO that has multiple programs, multiple services of things that they offer to the community, mostly in the prevention arena. as a result of a lot of the federal funding in that, private sector entities or nonprofits have contracted with our FCO department to provide a lot of programming that they were given money for, and they were unable to provide that, those needs, or they realized that we could provide it much better than they could. So they've moved their money from themselves over to us to contract that services. This budget is less than it was last year, partly because of the 1.5 million in buildings. If you remove that, this budget is a little smaller, and that's because some of those funding areas and food assistance and those kind of things have shrunk a little. We do provide school-based therapists for all of our schools except the West Salem, or the Salem School District. They have their own. Like I said, there are a number of programs and a number of outreach programs that this department provides. The total budget, as you can see, is down from the previous year. I believe this is probably going to be more of a status quo moving forward, this kind of level of services and that. But I would recommend that you tentatively approve both. Again, you can have Noel answer any questions on the administration side. Probably not much to answer there. But if you want to ask Brent questions, both about the new building and how successful that's working, or all the programs that they provide, he's here and available to speak.
Any questions for Ms. Carroll or Mr. Demo?
Move to TA.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Watson, Mr. Hartman. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? Both resources and appropriations for Health Services Administration and Family and Community Outreach are tentatively approved as proposed.
Can't let Brent off that easy, my God.
I do have questions about the FCO building. I'm the chairman. I can do what I want. So who all's in that building? Are there public-private partnerships and how does that work?
Absolutely. So, my entire department is over.
Can you have
there.
him move forward, please, so the microphone can?
Brent, come on closer.
Just grab this one for him.
He's good.
So you're familiar with the programs my department does. We have vacated the academy building completely. So my entire department is housed over there. And here is the list of agencies that have moved in with us. So we have the Oregon Department of Human Services. So you could sign up for the Oregon Health Plan. You can get your SNAP benefits, TANF, employment-related daycare benefits. They have 4 staff there and 2 of them are bilingual. They're there 5 days a week. We have 2 staff from Northwest Senior and Disability Services. You've heard of Salem Free Clinics in Salem. Well, their subsidiary out here is Polk Free Clinics. So this Saturday, they are actually operating their first completely free medical clinic. They will be doing that 2 Saturdays a month to begin with, and that will increase if the need is there, which we think it will be there. We have a pediatric clinic that has moved in, Small Town Pediatrics. So they're obviously providing medical services for kids and families under 18, but it's also a really nice partnership because if we have a family that needs to be seen quickly, they are right there for us, and that's something that they'll do. We have 4 staff from Catholic Community Services providing home visiting, doula services, lactation support, which actually goes perfectly because we also have full-time bilingual staff from the WIC program in the building as well. And we're already seeing this sort of cross-pollination of referrals with all of these different agencies. We have close to 15 staff from Community Action Agency representing 5 different programs there: rapid rehousing, youth programs, energy assistance, the weatherization program, staff who are running David's House in Monmouth, which is a shelter for youth. They are also stationed there. WorkSource Oregon has full-time staff in our building. And we have a unique partnership the last 6 years with OHSU School of Nursing on the Monmouth campus. They're actually embedded in our department. Their faculty come with them. The students can't graduate unless they do 3 of their term classes in our building. We work with them on social determinants of health. They do home visiting for us, case management for people with chronic conditions. So it's a pretty unique situation. And we have the little bit of office space left that we're kind of holding on to. I've got a couple of people on my hit list, but basically we really solicited the agencies that the clients need to see the most, kind of a one-stop shop. In addition to this, we partner with Elecron Food Bank, and we're the only food bank in the Valley that's open 40 hours a week. And so it's an amazing partnership, and we're able to provide food not only at this building, but we supply food to Western Oregon University's food bank and also the 2 food programs in Fall City for the next 18 months due to a grant we just got.
How has the co-location of all those agencies helped the community?
Well, it's funny because we're starting to gather that information from the agencies. I'll use the Department of Human Services as an example because I met with them yesterday. If they were just at their office in Dallas, only doing eligibility stuff there, when a family comes in and they might need something else, a food box, a referral for rental assistance, those types of things, the best that they can do is hand them a brochure or a flyer and say, here's where this other agency is located, go find them. The people that co-locate with us in this building, they're also cross-trained to make food boxes, to do referrals. They actually work the front desk. Everybody takes shifts. Almost all of the agencies are being trained in how to do that. So with DHS specifically, there was a family who was having some Spanish interpretation issues. And it just so happened that Diana from Public Health knew this dialect of Spanish, which was unique. And she just popped in and helped do the entire intake with a DHS case manager because she's located right next door. At the same time, almost every family that comes in while they're waiting for their benefits, they need a food box or 2 to hold them over till they can get to a food bank. They talked about how many families that they just feel amazed that they can say, hey, hang on, I'm going to get that food box. And then instead of handing a brochure and saying, go call this agency, they just walk right over to another door and say, hey, I've got someone here. Can we do a rental application assistance with them? And it happens oftentimes right there on the spot. Those are the things that we're seeing. And because I think the county's leadership in doing a building like this, most of these agencies may not even be in Polk County if we didn't offer this office space, let alone maybe offer services in more than just one spot in Polk County. And that's what we're seeing. It's only been a couple of months. So by this time next year, you'll have a fancy Brent report of all the different collaborations as you usually get. So, but it's really paying off so far.
Thank you. Appreciate that report. Further discussion? Thank you, Mr. DeMo.
Mr. Chair, I would just note for the record, since we've said yes to this budget, but just to give accolades to the entire health services team, which includes FCO. And I think more specific to the point that you've asked about, I call root causes. And again, we're spending now more than $42 million chasing behavioral health challenges and public health challenges. But if you look at the growth of the FCO program since I started here, and those who have some history on the budget committee know that when it was children and families, it didn't look anything like this, but it was the roots of this. And here we are now today with a department that I think is doing the best work anybody could possibly expect towards prevention of an escalation of the root causes, in my view. I mean, we all should be extremely proud of the work that happens on the prevention side. And I look at the school-based mental health program, for example, as one of those things that I cannot imagine a county that doesn't do that, or school districts that don't agree to do that. And my position has always been, these problems, the root causes start at that age level, at the youth. And if we can get some intervention and mediation with those kids in the school with people they trust, I think we can get a better handle on trying to stem this tide. I mean, the behavioral health crisis across this country is phenomenal. I mean, I just can't, it's just hard to imagine where this is gonna go. So I just want to make certain for the record to point out that, I mean, this is it's a large amount of money for FCO. But it's a place where I think we can all concur. And Brent and his team have done a terrific job of going out and finding the money. So, and again, you look at the contribution that the county has to put in here to help sustain it. We've always kept it pretty compact. But I just want to make certain the public knows that this is a place where, to your point about the root causes and challenges with behavioral health, we're trying to get ahead of it. You know, we're working all as a team to try and make certain that we find a pathway to stem this tide in the behavioral health needs. And this is where you do it. So
Thank you, Mr.
I wish we would add more counties doing this.
Yeah.
Because
it matters.
it makes a huge difference. And my wife is on the College of Science Advisory Committee at Oregon State. And when they ask the staff to leave the room and the advisory committee talks to the students, what is the number one issue they have? Mental health issues. They are struggling with that at the university level, and they're struggling with trying to get people to help them solve the problem. It would be nice if we did a better job of all the counties doing this at the high school level. And then when they get to college, they'd be better prepared to move forward. So it would be a huge benefit if we could encourage that.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, Chair, just to that point, we're convening other counties for a summit on some of our homelessness prevention work. That's gonna happen in April, and then there's a service integration summit as well to invite partners from across the state to learn about this, what has been built here. So I mean, the best thing governments can do is to plagiarize good ideas.
Yeah.
There's no need to reinvent the wheel and find those efficiencies that Polk County has found. So looking forward to hopefully some statewide outcomes there.
To speak to that same point, know that over in Marion County, the state legislature just appropriated $3 million to refurbish the Statesman Journal building so that a bunch of the not-for-profits can co-locate and do the similar concept over in Marion County. It's refreshing, but not surprising that Polk County has already executed on what Marion County's trying to do.
Yeah, and again, to back that up, we have plenty of time to editorialize here, and I think for this much money, we should probably editorialize a little. If I were governor for a day and my initiative was what this governor's initiative is about behavioral health, I would absolutely be saying, take me and show me every single county program, every single one. I want to know, because that's where the work is actually happening. And in all aspects of behavioral health and public health. And let's talk to those people and understand who are the champions and reward them. And again, we have a great example of our service integration program that lots of folks have started to come around to wanting to emulate. And I do believe this co-location model at FCO is something that it will pick up speed. But I think lots of folks that are trying to lead that want to be rewarded somehow. And right, I mean, it takes money. And we've been very fortunate that we have a team of people that have said, well, it's not about the money. It's about the reward of the work and the results and the outcomes. I honestly hope that, you know, in Noelle's career, she's got a ways to go yet, that she gets to see this root cause challenge turn the other way. And I really do hope for that. And I mean, I don't know how she does it. You know, it's just been a constant Everest climb, I think, for the work that she has to do. I don't know how you do it. It's got to be tough some days to get up and go face the mountain again. Yeah, and I don't do that to be fluffy. I'm just pointing out again for the record and for people that are listening. I mean, this is these are massive amounts of money. And it is stunning to me in my tenure, and for the guys who've been here longer than I have, to watch how big this mountain of money has grown. But the distinction, I think we don't say often enough, is that we're all alone. We're on our own in this work in Polk County. We really don't have significant partners on behavioral health, public health. This is what we do in Polk County, and which is different than it is with our neighbors around us.
Really well said. I'll give another example. This is kind of scalable too. I mean, it's affordable for us to do, but it did take years of cultivating relationships and partnerships, of course, and that's something that you can't throw money at. That's something that develops over time. But the Willamette Health Council helped us form a Falls City Health Committee, and they basically seeded a program with about almost $1 million, something like $700,000, to put a small facility in Falls City. And they're gifting that facility to Falls City. Should the program down the line not flourish, but it will flourish because it's low cost, and we're going to sort of have a miniature satellite resource center in Falls City where certain providers will spend some time there. You know, there's always been transportation challenges in big rural areas, but if we can bring services to people at an affordable price, that's great. And this is just, the fruit that has been, that's now being cultivated from that partnership. So the Willamette Health Council has really stepped up there, trying to find underserved populations and making sure that they have what they need. So.
Are they bringing like physician's assistants in or LPNs?
There's going to be a medical provider component that's still being kind of developed, but we're starting with some veteran services, some DHS exposure, resource center, behavioral health, but then they're hoping to get dental vans there for dental services. There'll be kind of a docking port for that, for the vans, and then yes, to have some health services and some telehealth services there too. So it was a really neat project. Brent's team helped develop kind of a survey to see what the community needed, what the barriers were. We got like a 65% response rate from the community in that survey work because there's so much interest in it. So it's really been a neat community project.
Wow.
And of course, I'm from Falls City and was kind of involved in this work when I was still mayor, and just to see it happen 5-6 years later is really, really cool.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? Hanson?
The next tab or actually it's still within this tab, is the Veteran Services Fund. Veteran Services, a lot of you remember when we first started this, probably now 8-9 years ago. Do you know exactly, Brent? Oh, come on. Okay. But for this budget, we'll be dealing with year 8. We started it in January, essentially of a calendar year. At that time, we had no FCO type of VSO to provide services. We had one trained, lost that individual, got another VSO who provided great service. This program provides great services to our veterans. We now have 2 VSOs, and now we're having a third individual, not an VSO, but someone that helps coordinate and work with veterans and all that. Also, we have an outreach program at the local jail for our veterans called Gales Lodge. It's kind of a temporary transitional housing program that usually holds up to 5 veterans needing that bridge to get from not having a home to getting into some kind of apartment or some kind of home. We bring in, as you can see, lots of dollars for veterans that otherwise may not have been able to get those. Going through the process of getting your veterans benefits is a task that most give up on unless they have assistance. And they're widening that arena for benefits and that, so the paperwork is still a mountain to climb to get through it, but we provide services not only to veterans inside Polk County, but we're required to, if someone from Marion County comes over to get service, or someone from Yamhill. So we're seeing people even from outside the county getting services here because of the job that this program does. We've tried to limit our general fund transfer. At the start, it was $65,000. We've had it as high as 140. That was when we first were developing it. This last year, we approved 90,000, and this current year, we'll only have to transfer the 90, and next year we're proposing a $90,000 general fund transfer. But this program has benefited veterans greatly, and is something that the county can be proud of. We weren't required by law to have this because of our location in vicinity to the State Veteran Service Office. Marion and Polk were excluded from having a Veteran Service Office, but because of the difficulties for our veterans to get over there and the not as good a service as they could get if we provided that service here, we decided to start it 7-8 years ago, and it's blossomed into a very successful program. So this is its own unique fund, and it does receive about $125,000 from the state. They question how we do our budgets quite a bit and how we spend our money, but I fire back some nice letters now and then to them to let them know that we're doing what we should do, and they should concentrate on getting the veterans more money than picking on how we spend our money. So it's a good program. I would request that you tentatively approve both resources and expenses. And if you have questions, Brent probably answer most of those.
You, Mr. Pope?
And my question's to you.
Okay.
But first, I want to make the statement of, yes, we volunteered to do this, but it was with our arms pulled back behind our backs. So we saw the writing on the wall. We knew this was coming.
Right.
And of course, we didn't make any friends with Marion County when we did this. They ended up having to come along as well.
Right.
So the state really was forcing us into this space. But it was a good space. And we heard from lots of veterans that it's like anybody could do this better than what we're dealing with in Salem. So I don't mind saying that, because I think that's still an absolute statement that veterans are making. I'm curious about line 6130, state operating grants. So that's our revenue from the state,
Correct.
our allocation, and it's held fairly steady here. What do you know what the multiplier is supposed to be? Is there a set amount that the state is supposed to escalate this fund just to keep up with cost of living?
No. Basically, it is determined, they receive their funding obviously through the budget process, but they get lottery proceeds also that gets put into a pot. Our determination of how much of that pot we get is based on the number of veterans that we have residing in our county. We could serve another 20% outside our county, but we don't get funding for them. That other 20% goes to the counties where these veterans, it's not where they receive services, it's where they reside.
Yet the law says they can seek service anywhere.
Correct.
Just want to make sure I plug that in too.
Right. So the better job we do,
The less we're rewarded.
we're rewarding the veterans because they're getting a much better service, but we're not seeing the formula take that into account. So we receive, I think since I started here, I think our, 7-8 years ago, it was 110,000. You see that it's going to be about 125. There is no COLA, there is no cost of living. They the allocation just grows every biennium by about 1.5%. I don't know how much the state offices take of that pot of money that they receive from the legislature and the budget process. But it's not, in my opinion, directly coming to the counties that are providing that service. And I think their formula needs to probably be modified and taken a look at, but we're not the biggest, they don't like us that much over there because I push back and tell them to do their job rather than trying to tell us how to do our job, because we're doing it much better than they are. So
One thing they see is not all counties are spending down those lottery funds, so they, see that as a-
there's no need to increase the funding.
right.
Yeah.
So perhaps the money should follow the veteran and wherever they get served, that agency.
Mr. Morthurst, and then it looks like Mr. Demo had a comment, so.
I just want to comment on our staff and our VSO office. So several veterans comment to me, they run into dead ends in their local counties and they contact ours, and ours is successful getting them through to the needs that they need for hearing or whatever the challenges they have. But I also want to just ask the question on Gales Lodge. And what's the annual budget we have for Gales Lodge? And then how many veterans does that house, and how many have successfully been transferred out of that back into society?
Mr. Demo, if you would come to a microphone to answer that question.
I'll start with my pile-on with Greg and just make a quick comment. 2 years in a row, I've actually asked ODVA for the funding formula allocation and what other counties get, and they won't tell me. They said it's not public and they don't share that. So they won't tell me how much Lynn, Benton, or Lincoln, or Yamhill gets for any kind of comparison. So
Great story, that would be.
somebody else should ask that question, because it's crazy to me. The other contracts we have from state agencies, of course, they increase every year because just staff costs increase every year. We charge school districts more for the school-based mental health program every year because those staff cost more every year. With ODVA, we're not seeing any kind of curve that is keeping up at all, just with cost of living. So it'd be interesting if somebody with more clout than me asked ODVA what each county is getting and receiving from them based on their population of veterans. So Gales Lodge question, I think July will be year 5 or 6 that we've been open. We have operated Gales Lodge for around $50,000 a year total, and that includes case management. So it's an ongoing grant that I compete for, but I get every year from Community Action Agency. This fiscal year, we wrote for an additional grant through ODVA, and we got a one-time funding allocation. I believe it's $65,000. And that's going to take our case management from 0.5 to full-time so we can move more guys through. Our numbers today are 37 guys successfully rehoused into permanent housing through the program. We started out a little ambitious and we were trying to do 7 guys at a time, and then we went to 6, and we have found that the sweet spot is 5 because it's not a giant place. And 5 gives people enough room there. So there's some elbow room and some breathing room, and it's very manageable for the limited case manager that we have.
And I just wanted to ask that question because Polk County finds a way to stretch the dollar probably more than any other county that I've ever witnessed. And it's just amazing how we can take on a veterans housing and have it be so successful and effective when I see others build them for 10 to 12 million and then struggle with their clients meeting the needs of the people they put in there. So I just want to point that out, and great job.
And I would be remiss not to mention amazing partnerships with Easter Seals. They have a veteran program. Polk CDC here in town is one of the places that we're able to take the guys and actually put them into permanent housing. And then, of course, the partnership with Dallas United Methodist Church. That is an incredible partnership, and they do a lot with the guys that are there as well. So it's people coming together, much as the style of everything we do. It's not just one department or one entity.
There's a brand new veterans permanent housing facility in Salem, Courtney Place. I don't know if you're aware of that. I know they just,
Actually, I think they opened Monday for their first guys moving in.
April 1.
Yeah, the veteran service officer at Western Oregon University, who was there forever, he is actually
Ezekiel.
coordinating, running the entire thing. So a little Polk County flavor there.
Yep. That's right. That's right. Andrew was at Woo
Yeah.
before. I remember Courtney Place. Right. Any further questions or discussion?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Morthurst. Is there a second? Those in favor of tentatively approving both resources and appropriations, the Veterans Service Fund, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? The resources and appropriations Veteran Services Fund is tentatively approved as proposed.
On to Public Works.
That sounds great.
All righty, Public Works Fund, actually, we'll be talking about the Public Works Fund and then later the Public Land Corner Preservation Fund. Public Works Fund, is made up of a, administration program, the county shops, the road maintenance, the road construction, surveying and engineering. Those are the program elements within the Public Works Fund. You can see a in-depth report for the annual report for the Public Works Fund. Kind of gives you an overview of what Public Works does, where the funding comes from, where the expenses go, crushed rock, all those kind of things. It's a pretty good program summary, and a little colorful and all that. You can see that Hill County received recognition from the statewide pavement management consultant that grades all basically paved road services in the state. He sent an email that basically said, I never do this. However, I needed to point out that your county has scored the highest ever, and they were basically amazed at the work that our Public Works crew and our paved road system is, the shape it's in compared to everyone else around the state. So when you hear people knowing that they're in Polk County because of the smoothness of the roads and those kind of things, they probably aren't far off. That is a reality. Administration program basically consists of the Public Works transfer to the Public Works Construction Fund, their contingency, and then the 3 staff members in that department. That's a clerical, an office manager, and or more than an office manager, office assistant, and then the Public Works Director, which is Mr. Todd Whitaker. The next program is the county shops. We have a new shops facility that was built with some of the Public Works Construction Fund monies. We have 3 full-time mechanics in that program. They're 5 days a week, but they're on 410s. So, or one of them's on 5/8 and the other 2 are on 410s. So we have at least 2 mechanics at all times and 3 on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, providing those services. They do a good job maintaining not only the Public Works fleet, but they also maintain the county motor pool and the sheriff's fleet of vehicles. We do farm out some of the big repairs and that. However, overall, the SHOPS program provides a very valuable service. The bulk of the work is in the next program, which is the road maintenance program. It's where we do most of our road maintenance work. We have a road construction fund where we're doing that program. Actually, the road construction one does major projects, or so that's how we distinguish it. But this is where you get, vegetation management, chip seals, approach paving, all our gravel road maintenance, fuels for the department, vegetation, like I said, management, signing, striping of roads. All those are your normal functions and annual functions of our road maintenance program. This year, you'll notice that we are not hardly going to do chip seals this upcoming year. We're in a place where we're beginning to look at having to do secondary chip seals and that. And the question we're looking at is that the best way to go? Or so we're going to be assessing a bunch of our roads. We may be looking at doing some paving projects on major arterials and those kind of things. But this year we won't be heavily into chip seal. We'll be doing a little more on asphalt, as you can see on the dollars there. Crushed rock, like I said, is the maintenance of our gravel roads. That, if it's a dry year, you don't use as much crushed rock. If it's a wet season, we have the ability to grade and work our gravel roads longer. But that usually stays around the same amount that we have. We've seen increases in costs in paint for striping, actually 100% increases in those type of costs. There was a shortage that caused around the nation in striping and that. So it was a nice way to get paint costs to go up quite a bit. As I mentioned earlier, in machinery, you see it's a big capital outlay number. That number, like I said, is probably going to be reduced. They're working on it, and I'll have probably a better number in May, and maybe even a different number come June. But that number will only go down. I think it probably, before we finally adopt this, will probably be near the $600,000 or $700,000 amount. That additional 500,000 will probably be just put back into contingency, unless Todd finds a particular asphalt road that he wants to pave. Right now, pricing on asphalt is right here. Not a great time to do it, but trying to predict the future is difficult too on asphalt and elements of it. But FTE had a challenge. Our workforce, it's tough to maintain our workforce, especially when the construction season is going well. The monies that are being offered outside on the private sector outweigh our salaries that we're providing. Obviously, the benefits that we provide are probably much greater, and the guaranteed year-round work is there. But we've had people leave for that. So staffing hasn't been a critical issue, but I don't think we've been fully staffed on our public works crew for a year at least. And when we do, then we lose another. So if we're fully staffed, it's for a month or two, and then they're back to having an opening or two. But overall, they do a great job. They're recognized statewide. So they're very good. You can see on the next page after their budget, how we spend our operating supplies, how we spend our contract services. We do things a little different than most counties. Most counties try to do everything in-house. We tend to do what we do best and contract out those services because it makes a lot more sense than having full-time staff and building a kingdom when you don't need to. We'd like to put our money more into the road rather than just the FTE that are required. So, you know, we have a different philosophy. I think you see the results with our philosophy, and I wouldn't change that philosophy. Public, the road construction program, that's where we do a lot of our major programs or major improvements. We did a rebuild on Grand Ron Road this last year, which was a complete reconstruction of that road. When we originally did it about 8 years ago, we didn't anticipate the traffic pattern that ended up occurring on that road because of the issues at Valley Junction, and that a lot of the heavy truck traffic used Grand Ron Road rather than the state highway because it was so much easier to access the highway to go back west, or I guess east, to go back into Salem or McMinnville or wherever they needed to go. So our road essentially got destroyed way before its life. So we ended up rebuilding that road, put in 2 feet of rock, extra asphalt, with anticipation that Valley Junction will not get constructed in the near future. And as a result, we'll have that heavy traffic on there. It was a complete road closure at times, but the community did well. It was well advertised. We had no complaints when we closed the road and that project went well, and it ended up turning out quite nice. We have other projects that we're working on right now. There's a bridge replacement and a pavement improvement on Black Rock Road in the Falls City area. You're gonna have a safe school route program off of Hoffman Road and in the Independence area. Those 2 projects will probably occur this fiscal year, or a good portion of it. A lot of those projects aren't just Polk County funded, they're federally funded or, partnerships. The Grand Ron Road partnership was with Yamhill County and with the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ron. We were the project lead. We're pretty good at it. So we've bid out the Safe School Route program, and we're in the process of acquiring right away. We've completed that for the Black Rock project, and we'll be bidding that out for construction in the near future. So those are your big ticket items in this road construction fund. Some of that will carry over into the 25-26 year. So that's why you see some of the contingency not being spent in that. The other 2 programs are our survey program. Survey has been busy with right-of-way acquiring right-of-way for the Black Rock project and negotiating those kind of things. Staffing level is probably appropriate at about 3 there. Engineering is the other program. I'm increasing FTE in that program by 1. The workload that on design and those kind of things is getting greater. We don't have enough staff to produce what we're needing to produce. I put it in for an additional body. We haven't yet determined whether we're going to hire an additional person or contract that out. Todd's still working on that in his mind and trying to see how it plays out and trying to figure out what level of engineer, if we hire one, we want to attract a fairly new one or a more seasoned one. We're working those details out. We'll have that probably figured out before we adopt this budget. So I just wanted to make sure the amount of money was appropriated, and we may move part of that from personnel services down into material services for contracts. But either way, we're going to need additional help and a body to produce some of the stuff we're producing out there. So that is the Public Works Fund. Like I said, their annual report is very good. And total is down from what we did, but that's because we completed the Grand Ron project, those kind of things. Always on the radar is state gas tax, which is the biggest revenue source that the county gets for its public works. It's projected to be 7.4 million, I think, this year. So, you know, as you get more hybrids, as you get more Teslas and electric cars on the road, gas isn't as purchased as much. So they're probably looking statewide at formulas and changes and those kind of things. We just live with what we get. We get 30% of the distribution of gas tax money as a county. So we spend it as best we can. And I think the proof is in the condition of our roads. So I strongly recommend tentative approval of the appropriations and the resources for the Public Works Fund.
Further discussion?
I just want to point out that that gas tax is increased this year. It's not going backwards, as we've heard several times in public meetings, ODOT stating that we're broke and we're operating on 2002 funding equivalencies. It's still going up. There is challenges going ahead, but the biggest challenge that we're facing in the small communities is the cities don't have money to maintain their streets, whether they have a 20% of that share or counties have 30. Counties have enough challenges maintaining what we have at 30%, but the infrastructure and the complexity of stormwater drainage and roads and curbs and sidewalks at a huge cost. So hopefully they can come up with some answers, and maybe we can redirect some of that funding once they come up with a new plan to where the counties and cities can get a little bigger piece of that pie. I know life would be a whole lot easier for all of us, but I'm just very proud of our Public Works Department and the efforts that the crew does and the pride they have in their work. It really shows in our county. I move to approve tentatively.
Thank you, Mr. Monkhurst. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Hartman. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? The resources and appropriations of the public work funds are tentatively approved as proposed.
Lyle had to bring up that 4-letter word, ODOT. It causes me pain. Greg wanted to be governor for a year and I want to be ODOT director for a year.
A day, just a day.
Can't fire that many people in a day.
Be dictator for a day.
Yeah, a day. I need a year to clean house over there, but never mind. I won't go on. That takes too long. PLCP is the other fund that you need to tentatively approve resources and appropriations. We get monies from recording fees for this fund. It was set up back in the early 90s, I think. 10 cents of your, or $10 of your recording fee back then were directed to Public Land Corner Preservation Fund, which is the survey markers throughout your county system. This fund goes like this because it's recording fees. So when recording's good, they're flush. When recording's not good, we drain real quick. And then, so the amount of money is going toward Public Works for that. Public Works charges out the work that they do for public corners from this fund. You can see historically, we were at 115, 125. We're now down into the 60s because the funding's not there and the revenue's not there for the fund. So we're not going to zero out this account. but we're not, it'll be that way until revenues start increasing again, and then we'll work on corners as a survey crew more when more funding is available, so. With that, I'd recommend tentative approval of the $110,000 budget for this fund.
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Abstentions. Resources and appropriations of the Public Land Corner Preservation Fund is tentatively approved as proposed.
Well, that's everything that's on your agenda with the exception of transfers, contingency for non-departmental. Technically, you have tentatively approved every transfer because all the transfers go to the appropriate funds, and you have now tentatively approved those funds. But we usually, again, tentatively approve the transfers, and then we tentatively approve the contingency. We don't have any wish list items to reduce or deliberate over, so you probably can do that if you wish before public hearing or public testimony, if anyone's here to do that at 10:30, but you got to stay at least till 10:30 to open that up and see if anyone is here for that. You can take a break, your choice. There's only two things left.
Well, why don't we do the transfers and contingencies, and then we'll still have time to take a break,
Yep.
and then we'll be back for sure by 10:30.
Okay, if you want to look at them again, you have to go back to the non-departmental tab that you have in your budget books. Total transfers that are being proposed and which you have somewhat tentatively approved is $2,040,000. You can see the transfers which occur. The one to Public Works is more of a plug figure. Any monies we receive for state timber in the general fund, we then transfer to the Public Works Fund for the maintenance of timber routes that have been designated by the county 25 years ago. So sometimes that number is as little as $3,000 or $4,000. It's been as high as $600,000. It depends on when the cut occurs and when the revenue is received at the county, but it comes into the general fund and then just gets moved to Public Works. So we just use a natural $150,000. You can see just historically in 22, 23, we got 20,000. The year before in 21, 22, you were in 350. So I can't guess it. I could make it smaller, but it doesn't matter. And Todd knows that, and we don't live off that transfer. So it is what it is. Transfer to the dog control program is down because we're not going to have that halftime FTE in there. The Marine Patrol is the required amount that I have to transfer because they don't cover management services costs. Law library is kind of where we're at and trying to maintain that and still fall within the ORS guidelines. Domestic mediation, sometimes we make that transfer, sometimes we don't. It just depends on the state funding and how much they spend. You can see historically the 2 previous years, it was 0, but I always kind of leave 5,000 in there. Health services, which is the transfer to FCO, is 100,000. Public Health Fund, 150. Juvenile is 800,000. Fair Fund, 200. Veteran Services is 90,000. And then the transfer to the building improvements and the insurance fund are in there. That makes up your $2,040,000 along with the 7,000 up above. That's your total department expense. So if you want to tentatively approve the transfers, that will make the total. You already approved the $7,000 up above.
Is there further discussion? Is there a motion to tentatively approve the transfers as proposed?
So moved.
Second, Mr. Pope, thank you, Mr. Hartman. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Right.
Those opposed, please say nay.
I should point out that these aren't the only transfers that occur. Management services transfers, public work transfers. So there are other transfers, but these are the ones that general fund. General fund can transfer to anybody.
Right.
And other departments, if they're in the process and are approved in the budget, can transfer to other funds. But after the adoption of the budget, I couldn't transfer money from public works to the general fund or from behavioral health to the general fund because that's not allowed.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yep. And then the last thing did we vote already? Yeah.
We did.
Okay. And then the last one is the fund contingency, tentative or proposed at $3,276,765. So, I would recommend tentative approval of that amount. Hopefully that number I can get to increase before May and June.
Further discussion?
Also move.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Watson. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say nay. Any abstention? Contingency is tentatively approved as proposed. We'll adjourn until 10:30.
You'll recess.
Recess. Thank you.
Oh, we'll do the revenue.
Thank you, Ms. Panetta. All right, we are back on the record. The time is 10:30. Is the time certain for public comment. There are members of the public who would like to comment. Now is the time to do so. Please come forward. I do not see any members of the public in the room, and no one has come forward. That concludes our public comment period. I believe we have one final item,
We
Mr.
have revenues for the general fund. And if you turn back to the budget message section and that, the very end of that is the proposed revenues for the general fund of $31,724,250. That is what is being proposed. You tentatively kind of approve those in the individual budgets, but in the general fund, you don't do resources. So this is the time to do the resources to pay for the general fund total budget. And that is the amount that you would tentatively approve. So I would request that you tentatively approve those resources, and that will conclude your activity for the April budget here or budget session. And then we will reconvene back in May for formal approval of the budget and setting of the tax rates.
Further discussion? Is there a motion?
Move to TA, the revenues.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say nay. The abstentions, the revenues for the general fund are tentatively approved as proposed. We are adjourned until May 15th, 2024 at 9:30 a.m.